Maloof wrote in a few sentences this fundamental truth long before the War on Terror. Unfortunately, this is a fundamental truth the world seems hell-bent on rejecting. Unless we accept this fundamental truth, we will never be able to develop a strategy that will defeat the Islamic State and eradicate this ideology from the planet. Over 13 years ago, the United States began in earnest its war on terror. As of today, there are 5 times as many, and by some estimates, 20 times as many radical Islamic militants as there were when we started this war. Now, what's wrong with this picture? What's not working? It's our strategy that's not working. Our strategy is, in fact, counterproductive. Let me explain. The United States has the greatest military force on the planet. Nobody's going to contest that. Yet we've been unable to defeat in over 13 years this ideology that's making war on the United States and on the West and on Christians. Now, here's the major flaw in our strategy. We use conventional military forces in this war. We can't do that. By our strategy, in order to win, we have to do this, and we have to do this. Kicking in doors and flattening cities are part and parcel of our definition of victory. When we liberate a city, it looks like this. Now, clearly, this kind of strategy cannot continue. Why don't we realize, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that acts like these, that the kicking in the doors and the flattening of cities, these acts are going to be viewed by most of the Muslim world as nothing more than a continuation of this act of rape that begun to be perpetrated by the Christians in the Crusades. No matter how stellar the tactical victory, we are always going to suffer a strategic loss. That strategic loss is going to be suffered because we cannot think unconventionally and because we fail to realize that we are fighting not just a bunch of terrorists or not a political entity, but we are fighting a radical, fundamentalist Islamic ideology. In order to win, we have to understand why they fight, and we have to understand their psychology. Now, reading this book by Maloof, The Crusades Through Arab Eyes, this is essential. This is required reading for my guys. We must understand why they fight, and we must understand their psychology. These are things that we refuse to do. The entire world seems incapable of getting a firm grasp on the reasons why these people fight and their psychological makeup. That is our fatal mistake. Those are the fatal flaws in this strategy. And this is going to be hard for you people to watch. This is going to be incredibly hard for you people to watch. But I need you to see the kinds of evil things that the Islamic State does. Now, a lot of people are going to get on to me for showing these kinds of things. These are just going to be still pictures, no videos, but they're going to be horrific. I'm going to warn you. And now, I understand a lot of people don't want to see these kinds of things, but I also understand we are a culture of the video. We are a visual culture, and we are no longer a culture which can be outraged by mere words alone. We cannot read or hear descriptions of these things and become outraged enough to act. We must see them to fully understand them and to fully feel the outrage that's necessary to do something about such an evil in this world. Now, here are just a few of the things that the Islamic State does on a regular basis. These are the kinds of things this state perpetrates. Now, President Obama will be shocked to hear this, I'm sure, but Muslims aren't flocking to fight for the Islamic State because they're unemployed and have nothing better to do, because they feel this sense of economic disenfranchisement. That's not the case at all. They flock to fight for the Islamic State because of the ideology and because they view the ideology as being successful. They view it as a winning cause, supported, of course, by Allah. Now, this whole idea of ooh, we're going to improve the economic conditions in these areas where these Islamic fighters come from, and we're going to make sure they have jobs. Well, that's just a idiotic idea. Okay, that is total garbage. Excuse my language, but it is. It's garbage. Did I say another word I need to apologize for? Oh well. Now, the president's strategy is going to fail for a number of reasons. One of those reasons is we cannot win this by air power alone. We have to have boots on the ground. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. When we try to win by air power alone, do I need to remind you what happens? We do this. All right? That's what happens. We level cities. It's going to take boots on the ground to eradicate this ideology. And it's not going to be other Muslim boots on the ground that are going to do it. Why? Because they're ideological brethren. That's why. You're never going to get a Muslim country to commit 100% to eradicating these people. It's not going to work. All you're ever going to get is half measures, and it's time we wake up and realize that the United States is going to have to do this on our own. Now, the United States government is never going to do it. Why? Because we must be politically correct. We never can recognize what we're fighting because we can't even use the term Islamic anything. Okay? We can't label these people as Islamic. In fact, we run from that. We look at the truth and we get the truth as far from us as we possibly can. And the way we demonstrate that is by saying these people are not Islamic. They claim to be, but they're not. Well, holy cow! How can you be more stupid? How can you have an idea that is more doomed to failure than that one? I don't get it. Now, there's another reason that the president's strategy is going to fail. Because even if we committed ground troops, we're going to do this in a conventional manner. It's going to be a conventional war. Now, large occupying armies, kicking in doors, and air forces leveling cities is what it will take if we go that route. And what is that going to do? It's going to do the same thing that it's been doing for the past 13 years. It's going to inflame passions in the Muslim world, and it's going to create more radicals than it kills. I promise you that. It's been doing it for 13 years. Nothing's changed. Now, it's clear we must have a new strategy. It's very clear. We've got to have a new strategy. And it's equally as clear that the government is not going to do it. The United States government, under this administration, and probably under any other administration if you want to know the truth, but especially under this administration, is bound and determined not to have a strategy that will work. In fact, it appears bound and determined to have a strategy that's counterproductive and is going to get us all killed. One more thing about the strategy of Barack Obama. Let's tell these people we're going to limit it to 3 years. Let's just get that right out front, and let's let them know, hey, we're only doing this for 3 years. Obama likes to talk about strategic patience. Well, there's no group in the entire world that has more strategic patience than the radical fundamentalist Islamic groups. Nobody has more strategic patience than they. Okay, so the government's not going to do anything about it at all. All they're going to do is half measures. They're going to bomb here and there. They're only going to do things that are counterproductive, that are going to increase the threat. Okay, that's all they're going to do. So what are we going to do about it? How can we solve this problem of the Islamic State, number one, and the ideology of radical fundamentalist Islam? How do we approach that? Well, we have to do it as people. We, the people, must do it in spite of Barack Obama, in spite of a very, very strangely counterproductive president, okay? We have to do it in spite of him. Now, there is a state of war which exists between the Islamic State and the United States. That state of war existing, it is legal for Americans to engage the enemy on the enemy's ground. Now, some Americans, some very brave, heroic, patriotic Americans are already doing this. They've signed on with the Kurds to fight with the Kurds, and they've signed on with the Iraqi militia to fight with them. But a few Americans here and there is not going to get the job done. I'm sorry, but it's just not. Now, we do not need the tens or hundreds of thousands that the government would throw at this. We just don't need it. And in my opinion, those guys are going to be busy fighting the Russians somewhere else, okay? Even if they're not, That kind of force is not going to work. That is not what we need. We need a new strategy, and I'm fixing to explain to you why our strategy is the strategy that's going to work. Now, Team Swandog is a militia of American citizens that's on the rise. We are rising up to destroy the Islamic State and eradicate radical fundamentalist Islam from the face of the planet. And we have a strategy to do it with a relative handful of guys compared to a full-scale military invasion. We're going to do it with a strategy of unconventional warfare, guerrilla tactics. Now, any strategy to eradicate radical fundamentalist Islam from the planet must begin with destroying its marquee name, the Islamic State. It just has to. That's where you start, by destroying the marquee name. By destroying that marquee name, the Islamic State, you begin to undermine the legitimacy of the ideology. Now, undermining the legitimacy of the ideology is also a key aspect of destroying the Islamic State. Now, we have a strategy not only to eradicate radical fundamentalist Islam from the planet, but our strategy begins with defeating and destroying the Islamic State. Now, how do we destroy the Islamic State? We do it by using guerrilla tactics, by unconventional warfare. That's how we do it. We go in with very inferior numbers to what is on the ground there, to the number of Islamic State fighters that there are. But we use superior tactics and superior training. Now, our strategy will result in the destruction of the Islamic State by 3 avenues. 1, by tactical victories on the ground. 2, by eroding the morale of the Islamic State. And 3, by undermining the legitimacy of the Islamic State. Now, how do you do that? By your tactical victories. When you are attriting the enemy every day, killing dozens, if not hundreds, of the enemy every single day, with little or no losses on your side to speak of, that's going to erode morale. When they see they can't win against you, that you come and you sting like a hornet and you leave them with dead men to take care of, that's going to erode morale. When they have fear of sticking their head out a window or stepping out a door for fear of catching a sniper's bullet, that's going to erode morale. When you erode morale, you erode performance, and you also have an effect on recruiting. Once the morale is eroded, you can fight more effectively. Now, how do you undermine the legitimacy of the state? Simple. Through these tactical victories and through a psychological warfare campaign which capitalizes on the victories and which places this as a religious war. Now, this is indeed a religious war, folks. This war is a religious war. It's the person making the war that gets to decide the character of the war. They've made it a religious war. They have declared themselves the soldiers of Allah, and they have declared Christianity their number one enemy, with Judaism a close second, and all other infidels a close third. This is a religious war, whether we like it or not. We didn't frame it that way, but we have to fight it that way. We use a psychological warfare campaign to expose them for the phonies that they are. When the rest of the Islamic world understands these people are losing, the Islamic State is no longer gaining ground, they are losing, and they're losing to an inferior number of infidels, mind you, then they're going to start thinking, Allah cannot be with them. This cannot be a cause that is supported by Allah. The legitimacy is therefore undermined. The ideology loses support. This is not an ideology that has been around in large form for a very long time. We've had a large part of our history that has been devoid of this ideology to speak of. It's never been an influence. Now it is the primary influence in the world. Team Swandog has the strategy to destroy the Islamic State and eradicate radical fundamentalist Islam. But we can't do it on our own. We're just a bunch of guys with elite training, that's all. We're not a bunch of guys with elite pocketbooks. That's the problem. We need your help. I'm asking you to help Team Swandog on behalf of the United States of America, on behalf of a people who have lost faith in their government to protect them. I'm asking you to help us destroy the Islamic State now, sooner rather than later, and eradicate this evil ideology of radical fundamentalist Islam from the face of the earth. So how can you help? If you're former CIA, former Spec Ops community, I need you, and I need you now. You need to go to my website, click on the contact page, fill out that form, tell me who you are, what you can do to help. I need you to help us. Tell me, are you CIA, Spec Ops, what? If you're just former military, but you've got some sort of combat experience and you can train up into an unconventional warfare doctrine, I need you. Even if you're just a good old boy who happens to be really good with the high-powered rifle, I need you. I can put you to work as a sniper killing these Islamic State douchebags. Now, we need other kinds of help as well. Of course, we need financial help. We need volunteers to do fundraising for us. We need your church. We already have a lot of churches that are out there raising money for us by taking special collections every Sunday, raising money to help Team Swandog win this religious war. Okay? We need your church. We've got a bunch already. We need more churches. We need small businesses and we need big businesses, okay? The small businesses can help a few hundred or $1,000 or a few $1,000s at a time. That's awesome. That's going to help out a lot, but it's not going to win the war. We need big businesses. There are big businesses in the United States who could fund us completely. Just 5 or 6 or maybe 10 of them could fund us completely, and we could win this war. We could win this war with the help of a relative few patriotic big businesses in the United States of America. But it's not going to happen on the big businesses alone. It's not going to happen on the small businesses alone. It's not going to happen on the churches and the individuals alone. It's going to be everybody pitching in. This is how it's going to get done. This is how the Islamic State is going to be destroyed, and the evil ideology of radical fundamentalist Islam is going to be eradicated from the planet. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take every patriot getting involved and doing what they can do. Whether you're a fighter, whether you're a shooter, or whether you're just good with gear, whether you're good with fundraising, or whether you're good with words, we need you to join up with Team Swandog so that we can build up and train up as quickly as possible and start destroying the Islamic State at the earliest opportunity. Now, many people tell me, hey, Swandog, the Islamic State is not an imminent threat. They're no big deal. They're just over there killing their own people. They are not a threat to us. Do I need to remind you that they have designs on the United States of America? They have said they're going to raise their flag in the White House, and they're going to make the United States of America a Muslim province under their ideology. Do I need to remind you of that? Even if they had no specific designs, there is such a thing as good versus evil. There is such a thing as good, patriotic Americans fighting evil in this world. Now, if you want to be a leader in Team Swandog, if you want to command a combat unit or a recon unit, or if you want to command a region, okay, you are going to have to read Malouf's book, The Crusades Through Islamic Eyes. And the reason that you have to read it is because if you don't read this book, the chances of you really understanding the reason why these people fight and really understanding their psychology is going to be very small. You must read this book. Come to me with knowledge of this book. Demonstrate to me you get it. You understand why these people fight. If you understand why they fight, you can understand how to fight them. I need men who are educated on this ideology. I need men who understand why they fight, who get the psychology of the ideology. That's how we're going to win. You have to understand why we fight the way we do. You have to understand why we use the tactics and the strategy that we use, or you're not going to be able to employ them effectively. You have to understand this war. That's why The Crusades Through Arab Eyes is required reading for my senior guys. It's absolutely required reading. They have to know it like I know it. They have to understand that this is an ideology, not a political entity, not just a group of terrorists. It's an ideology that we're fighting, and it is indeed radical, fundamentalist, Sunni Islam. When you understand those things, then you can understand how to defeat the ideology. Then you can understand what tactics that you need to employ, what kind of strategy that you need to have. And you can formulate that strategy, you can plan those tactics, and you can build up and gear up and go destroy the enemy. That's what Team Swandog is going to do with your help.